Good afternoon, everybody. It is just a few minutes after 2. I wasn't too late today. It is real gloomy and foggy out here on December the 6th, 2020. I did share with the group, but I'm going to go ahead and tag a few people, so if y'all just be patient with me for a minute. And I will tell you that I've pulled up the most recent afcars report, and I'm going to go over that because I really want y'all to understand numbers. And I know sometimes when you look at your own life and the things going on in your own life and how absolutely crazy and disturbing all the events of our world are right now, it's a little bit hard to wrap your mind around that. But let's talk about these numbers, and then if I have time, there's a recent case that came out of the Sixth Circuit case on parental rights or lack thereof, because I just don't believe we have any rights anymore. And it is talking about qualified immunity and investigations. So these cases are so difficult. We have so little rights in the federal courts, and they just keep nuancing out every single little thing. So I'm going to, after I get a few more people tagged here, I did do it set an event time, so I'm not sure if you caught that, and then we're going to talk about, I've got the afcars report right over here, so I want you to understand what those numbers are. Okay. All right, so I am going to turn this camera around. I'm going to show you the afcars report. It's so important that we educate other people, and if we can get people real numbers so they understand what's going on, it's a little more helpful. Sometimes I will post a number, like I posted the 672,000 number this past week, and everybody's like, where'd you get that information? It's more than we thought, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to turn this around. I've got the afcars report behind me. I've got a few things highlighted. I'm going to go through a few things for you. Hey, everybody. Okay, now let's see if I can get this moved around. Okay, there you go. All right, now this is the afcars report. This is created by the government, and my phone is going to not be very cooperative here. As you all know, I'm not the greatest production person, but here is what it looks like. You can pull this off by yourself. All you have to do is Google 2019 AFCAR, A-F-C-A-R-S. This is a report by the federal government, and I've highlighted a few things, and I'm going to move it in a little bit closer. The federal court do not stand by and support the Constitution. I agree with you, Christina. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Okay, so here's this afcars report, and here's the one thing I want you to see. If I can read it. If you can't read it, I'm going to try zooming in. Let's see if that works. Okay, did you see that? Okay, so they have two different numbers listed here. One is where they list so they've got the number in foster care on September 30th for the year, and that would be for the 2019 fiscal year. Okay, so the government's fiscal year goes from June the 1st until, well, they're saying September 30th. So it would go from October 1st to September 30th for the HHS, the federal government. And then they have down here numbers served by foster care system during the fiscal year. These are two very important, distinctly different numbers, and I want you to understand why it's so important that you understand the difference in them. Okay, because here you see that at the top it says 423,997 children that are in foster care at the end of the fiscal year. But look at the number below that I've highlighted. 672,594 children went through the foster care system in that year. And if you look back over here, see if I can do this. Very good, Connie. You understand these numbers a little bit more. Okay, you've got the number of children who enter foster care and the number who exited foster care. All right, so you go over here, back over here, and you see that those numbers, excuse my light here, are about 250,000. So basically, it's so hard to look at these numbers and really make sense of them, because what this is telling you is that 672,000 children were in the foster care system during the year. It's saying that 251,000 entered and basically 250,000 exited, but on September the 19th, there were only 423,000. So you can see how difficult it is always to get your head around these numbers, because you're like, if 251 entered, if 248 exited, that's only a delta of about 2,000. Why do we have a delta of 250,000 when it comes to the number of children served and the number in foster care at the end of the year? So I'm going with the 672,000. Now you can also see, as you go back here, that number runs about the same every year. 2015, it was 663,000. 2016, 680,000, 217, 685,000, 218, 686,000, 2019, 672,000. Okay, so it's really the same number. And look at the top number, the number in foster care at the end of the year, and really that number doesn't change either. You've got 421, 430, 436, 435, 423. So basically, I mean, our population has changed a little bit, but it really has not grown exponentially. And so, you know, you have to look at those numbers and you have to say, really, this looks a whole lot more like a quota than really an agency who's supposed to be improving the lives of families and children, okay? All right, now I'm gonna take you over here. This is a really important number right there. Do you see that? Oh, 31% of the children that enter foster care, 31% children in foster care on September 30th, 31% of the kids that enter foster care. Look at this number, because I'm going to show you something else about this number of these age ranges that's quite frightening, I think. Okay, so you see that? Less than 1 year old, 1 year old, 2 years old, 3 years old. So 1/3 of the children that are still in foster care are under 3 years old and under. Now, this is critical for several reasons. First of all is the early childhood years and the formation of early childhood bonds is so important, And here we have children that are in foster care 3 years or younger. They're developmental, where they are emotionally and bonding. Those are such important issues in those first 3 years. And 30% of the kids in foster care is in that group. All right, and if you look over here, of those children, almost half of them are in an unrelated foster care home. Unrelated, 200,000. Now that's 200,000. Let me see if that's children or homes. I think that's supposed to be most recent placement settings. So this is a little bit deceiving, because a foster home could have more than one child. So I think I haven't added all those numbers up, 195, 295. That doesn't look like 600. That does not look like 672,000 to me. If somebody wants to do the math on it, it looks like about 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 4. And I guess they're saying this is the number at the end of the fiscal year. But those children, more than half of those children are with unrelated caretakers. I'm paid for foster homes, let's just put it that way. All right, and the case plan goal is reunifying the parents. Now it says here 55% of the time is what they're supposed to be doing. Yeah, I get it. I know, I'm reading your comments here. So let's, this report has a few more pages I want to go over with you. So let me change to another page here. All right, so I'm going to flip to the second page, and there's a few things I've highlighted on here, as you can see. All right, now this is, again, the children in foster care on September 30th. I want to take you up here to the top corner. Those children have been in foster care. If I can get that on my screen. Can't get it on the screen, but it says an average of 19 months, okay? An average of 19 months. It's right over there. Hold on here, sorry. Can't get up in that higher up corner. Okay, so that's way up in the corner. So let's go back and look at these other numbers. Okay, here's a very important number. Look at this. Children entering foster care during 2019. Look at this right here. 19% of the children that enter foster care are less than 1 year old. I'm telling you, the baby snatching has increased. The baby snatching has gone up by DCS. 47,000 babies, 19% are babies. All right, let's go over here to the reasons. And we have neglect and parent drug abuse. Okay, let's look over here. Now notice 149% fall into those categories. So sometimes they will dual category. So if there's a neglect charge, they probably would also add a substance abuse charge. It makes it a little bit hard, I think, to identify what we need to be doing to reduce foster care, because they could be saying, I say that 80% of the children are in foster care because of the broad undefined term of neglect and what they call parent substance abuse, which can be anything from an occasional marijuana to a heavy meth use. So it's a very, very broad category. We need that broken down so we can really help parents get stabilized. And then they've got caretaker inability to cope, which is a really interesting category. This has a lot to do, and I just have to say we have a lot of high needs children, and this really has to do a lot of time with high needs children. So 149% of the children who are entering foster care are there because of neglect, drug abuse, or parent inability to cope. Now keep that in mind as we go back over here. 20% of those children that have entered foster care are less than a year old. All right, so then down here, we also have a child disability. Unfortunately, it's so unfortunate that we have to trade custody for care. And then alcohol abuse of a parent, which I found interesting that they set that forth in a separate category. But look at this, housing, do you see this? Housing right here, see this? Housing, 10% of the time. That's really crazy. That's just like shouldn't happen. That just shouldn't happen, right? That's unfortunate, and that's a situation that needs to be remedied. All right, so let's go on to their stats. Up here, this is, I can't get all the way to the top of the paper because I have a light behind me here. Children exiting foster care. Now, this is what's gonna throw you. This is what makes me crazy. Hang on here. Gotta get my thing adjusted. Okay, this is children entering foster care. Okay, now remember what I told you about babies? 19% of the children entering foster care are less than 1 year old. And look at this, only 4% of the children exiting foster care are less than 1 year. What does that tell you right there? What does that stat tell you? That stat tells you that they're putting babies in foster care, they're breaking their bonding, they're interfering with their relationship, with their safety and security and parenting and bonding issues, and primarily because of some type of substance abuse. And only 4% of those kids, therapeutic swimming pool. Yeah, thank you, Paige. So, and only 4% of those babies under a year old are exiting foster care while they're still under a year. It does say here that of the exiting, that reunification with parents is 47% of the time. I mean, I'm glad to hear that. But what you also can't see, because it's on the top of this, well, yes, you can. It's right there. Right there where it says mean age at exit. Now, again, these numbers so much just like don't make any sense. Age at exit, the mean is, or the average is 8 years. Okay, so how do you justify all of that? You've got 20% of the children entering foster care are less than a year old. They are saying that the average age of a child exiting foster care is 8 years old. It's just crazy. These numbers just swim in my head all the time. And I'm like, what does this say about our problems? All right, this one is children waiting to be adopted. And over here, less than a year old, 26% waiting to be adopted. I'm telling you, they are baby moving through DCS. It's just, they're pumping these babies through DCS. That's what they're doing. All right, I did want to bring you down here to race. It kind of runs consistently in all the categories, but about 44% of them are white, about 22% are Black or African American. Those are the two major categories. Now, I do think it's interesting that 22% are Hispanic. I find that I have not compared this to prior reports, but it says 22% are Hispanic. Now, and this also says 22% for Black. Now, I would guess that our Black and African American population is greater than our Hispanic population. So it sounds to me like a higher percentage per ethnic group is coming from the Hispanic population. Now, I don't know if this has anything to do with border or separation at the border, but I did find that 22% and 22% average. Now, then I do not know, and I mean, maybe somebody knows this, I don't know the ratio between white Americans and Black Americans. I don't know what that ratio is. This would kind of, if it were equal, you would say that it would be about 1/3 and 2/3 maybe, which would make those ratios about equal. But I think the Hispanic community needs to be very, very careful. And it says Hispanic of any race, so they certainly, I think some of those children are being targeted. And then over here, foster family home non-relative. Now, to me, this is like an oxymoron. You can't be a non-relative and be a family home, right? I mean, stop calling it that. Just stop calling it a foster family home. It's a non-related. But 53% of the children are going into the homes of strangers, basically. Non-related. And they're pretty much equal, boys and girls. They're 52 and 48%. I don't really think that's really a significant difference. I don't think that's part of the criteria that we need to be focused on. Okay, this is children adopted with a public agency involvement in 2019. All right, you see this. Here's the most important. Oh, I didn't highlight anything on there. I do think that, let me see. Now, the age at adoption, do look there, it's reduced down to 6.4 years, okay? And then it has time lapse between termination and adoption, time lapse from termination of parental rights. So the mean is, so they're in foster care, an average of 11 months, okay? I'm more interested in going to the next page. Oops, right there at the top. Here is what the data that everybody who knows nothing about child welfare, they question me on every time because they cannot believe it. So the relationship of the adoptive parent to the child prior to adoption, foster parent, again, is not a parent when it's a foster person. It is a caretaker, which they should be calling it caretaker. And it is 52%. So more than half the time they are being adopted with non-related persons. And then look over here, receive adoption subsidy, 93 or 83, is that 83? 93% of the time, okay? 93% of the time. So this is a connection that we have to take a look at. Adoption subsidy means 6%. Is that low or high? I'm not sure what number you're looking at. 93% receiving, what's the percentage of a Black girl 6-year-old to be adopted? Okay, so, all right, so Christina, I'm just gonna take you back to this over here. Children adopted. Okay, so here they're saying, since you asked me that question, I'm gonna try to give you a little bit of an answer. This is the children adopted through the public agency. You've got kind of an interesting difference here. Remember, let's look at these down here, race and ethnicity. So down here, half of them are white and only 18% are Black or African American. All right, as far as age, this is just time lapse over here. Age at adoption, 7% of them are, you asked about 6 years old, about 7% of them. So, I mean, if you just want to try to do some fancy math, it would, and you look at, you know, sort of a 1/3, 2/3 thing between white and African American children, you know, basically out of all adoptions, the anticipated percentage would be 1/3 of 7%, right? Okay, so my mathematicians out there, so you know, it would be anticipated that African American girl of 6 years old would be about 2% of that adopted population. Okay, somebody says last demographics say that Hispanic and Latino are 16.7% of the population. Okay, Sean, can you go ahead and look up African American versus white since you found that so quickly? Thank you very much. I want to see the comparison with the 22% both the Black and the Latino populations. I want to see how that compares to the overall population. Thank you. All right, so this, but I'm going to go back to, because I want to talk about, this is the part that I just cringe on, and which is part of the Adoption and Safe Families Act. So basically 93% of these children, and the numbers, we've got somewhere between, we're saying that, hold on here, waiting to be adopted, and adopted through a public agency. Waiting to be adopted, we've got 71,000, and adopted we have 64,000. No. Hang on. Reading these numbers are like crazy. Well, they don't care. They don't bring that one up. Hold on 1 second. Number adopted through a public agency, 53,000. I'm sorry, 66,000, and number waiting to be adopted, that was right up here on the first page. Okay, those last two numbers, number waiting to be adopted right there, and number being adopted, and that's those last two numbers. Okay, so we've got 71,000 being adopted, and those families are receiving adoption assistance subsidies. So that means that they're getting a monthly check for every child that they've adopted, non-white, non-Hispanic, African American, non-Hispanic, 12%. Oh my gosh, that sounds low. White, non-Hispanic, 60%. The African American is less than Hispanic. Interesting. Okay, that is a shock to me. So I guess the African American population is much more at risk of losing their children to foster care. So I was wondering about that. Okay, so adoption assistance, it means after the adoption, they're continuing to get money. They're getting money all the time. And so many, and remember when we go back and we look at our list, what is one of the reasons that children are being taken and put in foster care? It was lack of a home. Lack of a home. So these adoptive parents are getting, you know, $700, $800, $1,000 a month. Can I find out if it's already happened? So adoption records are in most states sealed. And I don't know, unfortunately, I don't know how else you would go about that. You could ask the department for it, but, you know, of course, they're going to say their records are confidential. You know, and that brings up this whole other thing about what we do to children as far as just really erasing their past and their history and their lineage, and then creating a whole new identity for them and canceling everybody else in their life. The chances that a percent for African American child are high then at 12%. Okay, yeah, exactly. All right, so we have to, and this, you know, this adoption assistance money is all derived out of ASFA, the Adoption and Safe Children's Act, Safe Families Act of 1997, which was then reauthorized in 2010. And this subsidy, keep in mind, this is growing every year. So if you have the average child being adopted at about, I think what we say, 7 years old, they've got another 10 years of receiving adoption assistance. And so every year you add 60,000 to that, right? And so you've got, but by the time those children age out, which aging out is a whole nother level of benefits, but by the time you look at that globally, and I know I have looked at the entitlement money, you have around 600,000 children are parents, adoptive parents, receiving adoption subsidy assistance. That is a real tax on our welfare system, as opposed to rehabilitating that family back in the first place. And this is where I am, this is where I want to attack that foster care. I want to reduce foster care. I want us to reorganize how we're handling foster care, and with the issues with whether or not they have a home, whether it's neglect, whether they have sufficient resources, whether they need job skills, whether they need drug rehabilitation, whether they need relationship parenting, budgeting skills. We need to stop forcing these kids into the homes of strangers. So again, this is my, so here's my numbers up here, this 672,594 kids being plunged into the homes of strangers every year. And we now know that 20% of those kids that are entering are babies. So you have got 120,000 babies being pulled from their mother's arms and put in foster care every single year. Every single year, we are doing the wrong thing. We are doing something really horrible. Okay, so that is my AFCARS report. So I'm going to turn this around now. I'm going to talk to you about a couple other things. Ooh, look at that. You can see my light there. So I'll take these specs off. All right, so let's talk about a couple other things. I want to... These civil rights issues with families is so complicated, and I was just reading a new case that came out in 2020 in the 6th Circuit, which is Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, and Michigan. Horrible decision for families, horrible. Also, though, I'm going to talk a little bit just about how obstacles and it's so, the pressure that is put on attorneys is so difficult because there's always some manipulation that occurs. And it's as much as I can help you start to understand the process and what is going on as families who are involved in this system, it's to really kind of help you educate you and see it. I know a lot of people are, checking on Google and, sending me stuff sometimes to review and habeas corpus and, and I don't blame anybody for doing anything. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on, but, unfortunately, Google's not going to teach you a lot of that stuff. And a lot of this really, once you are in the system, is about really preparing your case. As much as anything else, it's not even as much about knowing the law and knowing your rights and claiming, freaking sovereign citizen, which is really bad, you should never do. Telling them you're gonna sue them and file habeas corpus. And it's really, if you can prepare your case, that's the most important thing that you can do. I tell my clients when they come in all the time, I say, look, you own the facts. I'm just the attorney. All I can do is help you get your facts in the right format, in the right references, with the right documents to help you get your proof before the case. And I can tell you what I think your legal strategy should be. I can tell you what, legal issues I want to bring up as your attorney, but the facts as a parent involved in the system, as a family, as a grandparent, you are the one who own the facts, and you have got to get them together. And it may be as simple as photographs of your house, photographs of you and your family, photographs of things that you did with your children, because that you have to tell the story, and you have to tell the story with records and photographs and timelines. You have to be taking notes of what's happened. I mean, everybody has a smartphone now, so everybody has a notes section. I have downloaded a couple of journal apps to try to look at. I'm looking at, how we can do a family forward app, so we can put some more stuff in there, and you can use it perhaps as your own template for your timeline. But you have got to be making notes of the facts. And if it's a phone call with the social worker at 2 o'clock on Tuesday, you need to put that down, and so that you can say, we had a phone call at 2 o'clock on December the 1st, and this is my recollection of what was said. Because I'm telling you, these social workers, they're typing in notes, they're writing notes, they create their case based upon what their attitude is and based upon what they decide they want the facts to be. And if you can't answer those facts, then they're going to kill you, okay? You have to take notes. You have to do things. There are certain things I tell my clients to do, and it depends on where the case is. If they want to do, if there's a finding of some type of substance abuse, I mean, they are things they have to do, and they have to, get hair follicles or nail bed tests, and they have to get a substance abuse program, because I can't eliminate that obstacle myself as a lawyer, and I have, and actually I've kind of quasi-succeeded doing that, and then come to find out that it just backfired, because addicts lie. I've had a couple, and they lie, and they don't tell me the truth, and then they end up getting busted. But the facts belong to you. That's the most important thing you can do. When you go and visit your children, what happened during the visitation, when you talk to them on the phone, document, 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 document. We have a few advocates now around the country, just informal advocates. I know, there's some, we've got one in California, I've got one in Minnesota, Connecticut, okay, there are a few, South and North Carolina. I mean, every one of them, you have to get the facts down for them so that they can help you get your case ready to go. So it's so important. I just have to tell you, just do it, all right? Now, I'm going to talk to you about experts, okay? So I'm going to tell you what happened. The medical community is all about diagnosing child abuse right now, and they have child abuse specialists, as you know, and I need to solicit a couple volunteers from the group to help me pull some stats and some data on the ICD-10 for child abuse diagnosis from the hospitals, and see what we can start pulling up, because there is a rash of increased claims brought about child abuse in the emergency rooms when they are more complex medical conditions. And the fact that the medical community does not recognize that is so frustrating to me. Is so frustrating. I'm like, where are the medical ethics boards in this? That, they're forcing children to be removed from their homes when they have complex medical conditions. So, oh yeah, and the do no harm thing, for doctors, part of their oath. But so I have a case that's been a real struggle. I did not start the case, which is, again, always an obstacle for me, because if I start the case, I have better control of it from the beginning. But this was a case that somebody else had started. It was a child with fractured ribs, under a year old, that was premature, had complex medical conditions. I mean, I'm not even a doctor, and I know that if you have a, if you have a child that's premature, that's underweight, that has any other complex medical conditions, there are going to be rib fractures. There just are. And the fact that they don't catch these, they don't examine babies for these, and then when they do find them and they find several healing ones, then they say that they've crushed the baby. So this is a case where this was a premature baby, lots of complex medical issues, 7 months old. He was having trouble just breathing, gasping, couldn't, he had a lot of congestion, but he had had those kinds of problems for months, and he was just like 6, 7 months old, but he was 2 months premature, so he was basically a 4 or 5 month old baby. And he went in and he had several rib fractures. And of course, DCS flew all over it, took the baby away from the hospital, kept the baby, put it in foster care. Here we are several years later, and we're trying to get a second expert before the court. And so I asked, DCS refused to produce their expert named Dr. Verena Brown, who moved from Nashville down to Atlanta. They kept telling me they didn't know where she was. He didn't know where she was. And the judge, I finally convinced the judge to put a deadline on it. So this is the kind of crap I have to deal with. So I convinced the judge last summer to put a deadline on it, said that they needed to let me know by September the 4th if they were going to call her live to testify or rely on her prior deposition. And they did not. That September 4th, nothing, not a word from them. And then I was required to produce an expert opinion within 30 days after that, and I did. And then they had 30 days to either tell me whether or not they were going to offer a rebuttal opinion or depose the doctor or what they were going to do. And I heard nada from them, nothing. And then we go back to court to get a trial date, and DCS walks in, sends me an email, and then walks into court and says, sends an email the day before court, walks into court and says, oh, we've located the doctor. We're going to call her as a live witness. And of course, I blew my stack. And I said I wanted to depose her, and the judge is like, she's got a right to depose her. And then I says, and I want to do it now. I want to do it like by next week. And the judge is like, y'all go look at your calendars. We walk out in the hallway, and of course, a DCS attorney's never available, never available, never available, never available. We finally pick a date, and then he goes, well, I have to call the doctor. Well, the doctor's not available. And I'm like, that's your witness. You need to make the doctor available. And pushes it out 2 more months because time is, they blame the parents for delay, but they're creating delay after delay after delay. And then finally I was like, look, I'm going to send you a Rule 26 request, which is a request for the opinion, and just send me the Rule 26 request, and let's just get a trial date. We don't even need to do a deposition. And so I get this Rule 26 report from them, which is baloney, okay? It's total baloney, because here's what it says. Listen. Total phony baloney. She says, I'm not going to use a child's name, of course, but she says, I'm expected to testify that the patient was found to have multiple rib fractures. I'm expected to testify that a workup was done. This is a medical doctor. A workup? That's what you did? To evaluate for bone disease, including testing for osteogenesis imperfecta, and no such diseases were found. I'm expected to testify regarding the biomechanisms by which rib fractures occur. Then it says, further substance of facts to which I'm expected to testify will be more fully set forth in the courtroom. Bullshit. No. This is why I ask you for a report in the beginning, because you're supposed to tell me what facts you're going to rely on. And then she says, I'm expected to provide my expert opinion regarding rib fracture causation in children and child physical abuse, a medical diagnosis in the ICD codes. Further substance of my opinions to which I'm expected to testify will be more fully set forth in the courtroom. No. You're supposed to give me your opinion and tell me what you base it on. And I gave like a 30-page opinion from a medical provider. You're supposed to give me your opinion so I can send it to my expert so they can take a look at it, so when we go to court, we know what's going to happen and what's going to be said. So I sent the DCS attorney a letter and basically saying this. This response is inadequate. Rule 26 requires setting forth the facts and the basis of the opinion. Dr. Brown has provided merely conclusions. Please let me know if you're going to have her more fully complete this response. Otherwise, I'll file a motion to limit the testimony. Please let me know by Friday, December 4th, which, of course, I got nothing. So it's all about, as hard as I work to get experts, to get a case prepared, it's all about the state causing delay. Crazy. It's just crazy. It's ridiculous. And you would think, as a government agency, they would want the truth, right? When I first got my law degree, which was late in life, after I'd had a whole different career path in my life, in the restaurant business with my family, I went to law school. I got out of law school. I was working in the prosecutor's office. And, I kind of had the opinion that I wanted the truth. I did a lot of domestic violence cases. I did some child abuse cases. But I wanted to know the truth before I proceeded with the case. But that's not what they wanted to do. They wanted to prosecute, okay? This DCS, Department of Children's Services, they don't want the truth. They don't want to serve families. They want to prosecute. Okay, so I'm going to go over just a little bit. I don't like my videos to be too long. I see a couple of you are still hanging in there with me, and I appreciate it. Some of it, a lot of people I know just like watch later, and you know, when they're going to bed, all cozy down and ready to relax. Then they'll come back and they'll watch the videos, which is fine. But I'm too tired. If I wait late to do it, I'm too tired to do it. So I'm going to go over a little bit on this case. It's a brand new case that came out from the Western District of Kentucky, and it's called Clark v. Stone. It's a July 28, 2020 case. Basically, what happened in this case is the parents had three children, 12, 15, and 17, and they had an unruly 17-year-old. You know, that happens. We have those, and you want to kill them, okay? It should be a good parent. If you don't kill your teenager, you should be considered a good parent, pretty much. I'm just telling you. I tell all my clients, I'm like, how do you know? Why are there no good books on how to raise a teenager? Because any parent who survived it isn't going to talk about it. So they had an unruly teenager who was 17, and he went crazy. He went crazy on the mother, and she picked up a, what did she pick up? She picked up a back scratcher and smacked him with it, okay? She just smacked him with it right across the side of the face. Well, it might have been a little aggressive, but, you know, I'm just going to say if she would have called the police and gotten juvenile court involved, then she would have been in the system anyway, and, you know, they're crazy in juvenile court. So, and then one of the kids kind of got in the middle, and I think she may have smacked him too, I don't remember. Smacked across his rear end with a belt. So, he goes to school the next day, and he has a red mark on his face where mom whacked him upside the head. And they call DCS, and DCS comes in and interviews the children, and he tells them what happened. But you know, the next morning before he went to school, he had apologized to his mother, and he recognized that he was out of control, and you know, they sort of kissed and made up, as we say. So, but then one of the kids said that she hit him in the crotch. So they go to, the DCS worker goes to court and files a petition, and again, does not, listen, this is really frightening right here. I want to tell you this. They call the parents and give them like an hour's notice that there's going to be a court hearing. Okay? Yeah, well, that happens a lot, right? A lot. So they call the parents and give them like an hour, and the parents can't make it. I don't know why. But anyway, parents can't make it to court. And so the judge enters an order that says that the parents are not to use corporal punishment. Now, again, the parents aren't there to defend themselves. The kids aren't there. There's no hearing. There's no evidence. But based upon what the social worker says the children said, and she might have had that photograph, he says no corporal punishment, and they have to cooperate with DCS. Now, you must cooperate with DCS investigative orders. Drive me freaking crazy. Drive me crazy. I mean, as a person, as an attorney who came out of criminal law and was in criminal law, these investigative orders make me insane. So so DCS comes to the house with this court order. Ding, ding, ding. We've heard this story before. So they come to the house with a court order, and they start videotaping, the parents start videotaping them and tell them, first they object to them coming in the house, and then, of course, they show them this court order, right? Well, we got a court order that you're supposed to cooperate with investigation. And so their parents are like, okay, we object, but all right, come in, but we object, right? And so they come in, they walk around, and then they end up back in court, and they just do their ugly, nasty stuff. Now, I'll tell you, ultimately, DCS dismissed the case on the parents, but, they just run them through the ringer and, order them to do this and not do that, and it's just crazy. So they go to court, they file a civil rights claim, and they file it on a couple things. So, first of all, I'm going to tell you about the giving notice for court. This federal court opinion says that a social worker does not violate procedural due process by not giving you sufficient notice to come to court. It's not the social worker's job to inform you to come to court. Now, in a way, they're kind of right? Because it's really the court's job to inform you of a hearing. It is. And what's supposed to happen? I mean, what happens in 80% of the legal world is somebody files a complaint, they do a summons, you get served with process, and then there's a court hearing set. But this is the way DCS functions and CPS functions, is they do a petition, they go file it with the court, and then they ask the court for a hearing, and then they may call a parent and say, we're having a court hearing in an hour. You need to be down here. And the parent's like, I can't be there in an hour. You know, so the parents are thinking in a logical world, they'll set a new court date and they'll give them ample notice. But that's not what happens. They have an ex parte hearing, basically. So it's whether or not they gave them short notice for court. The truth is that they had an ex parte hearing without them. So the social worker totally got away with it. Totally. And whenever I see these things, I'm like, oh my God. So now here's the new trick they're going to put in their bag of tricks, right? Is giving you an hour's notice for a court date. Because I scream about ex parte orders all the time, that they are not, there's a lack of due process in ex parte orders. Now they're going to call you an hour before and say, we're going to have the court look at this in, 30 minutes. I mean, it could be 20 minutes, right? And you've got an opportunity to come and talk to the judge. We're going to do, let's see, at 1:15, we're going to call the judge out on the bench, and she's going to come out and rule on this. So might as well come, right? And then they're going to get away with the procedural due process violations. So that was part of it. And then they said that there was a First Amendment violation because they were retaliated against for recording them. Now, this is one that I think is important, because this whole First Amendment issue, I think, is so important, and I think recording the government is so important. And there is a case that I have relied upon. It's a case out of Seventh Circuit Court, which is in Illinois, and it's the ACLU v. Alvarez case. And it's where they put a law down that said that you could not record the police while they're doing their duties. So if the police was stopping somebody, interviewing them, frisking them, whatever, that you weren't allowed to record them with a video camera. And the ACLU actually took that up and said, yes, you can. It is a First Amendment violation. It's a prior restraint, First Amendment violation for you to prohibit or limit somebody's ability to record. And then there's a whole other list of cases, basically showing that the First Circuit, Third Circuit, Fifth Circuit, Seventh Circuit, Ninth Circuit, and 11th Circuit. Okay, so generally, so first is like northeast. First and third are like northeast. I think third is actually Pennsylvania area. The first is up like Vermont and New Hampshire. Fifth is, so fifth, I believe, is the southern part, like probably North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida. Seventh is Illinois. Ninth is the West Coast, like Florida. And the 11th is, I think the 11th may be, I'm not sure where the 11th is. Texas maybe. But anyway, they're saying in this opinion that all of those circuits, so 1st, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, and 11th, have had cases that say that you have a First Amendment right to videotape government workers, but not the 6th Circuit, okay? This is what's so crazy about qualified immunity, is like we are one country, and for qualified immunity, you have to show a case just like your case in your circuit or in the United States Supreme Court, just like your case, okay? So they're saying, first of all, you can't show us a 6th Circuit case, and then because it says, and then they say, they pick a case, a district court case that was not appealed apparently, and then it says, the right to video record is not clearly established. I mean, this is how freaking they twist the law around. And so so the right to video record was not clearly established. Now here's what makes this whole clearly established like an obstacle that's like a brick wall for civil rights cases, is that they don't go ahead and say in this opinion, but we're gonna say, because every other circuit has pretty much said that it is clearly established. We're going to now go ahead and say in the Sixth Circuit it's clearly established. I know this probably to you is like, it's probably like making your head spin, like not understanding it. And I'm telling you, it makes my head spin. And I've read hundreds of cases. I've read hundreds of these cases. So they don't do that though. They just say, well, there's one case in Kentucky that says that it's not clearly established in the Sixth Circuit. Honestly, what do you do with that? You know? And everybody's like, well, I want to sue him. I mean, what do you do with that? All right, so then it goes on to say, not only that, it says, here's this quote, even more tellingly, I don't know why they put an ly on the end of that. Even more tellingly, the cases cited by the parties consider the issue of whether the First Amendment encompasses a right to film police officers carrying out their duties, not social workers. Okay, so because Sixth Circuit hasn't had a case on point about videotaping government officials generally, this case nuances it even more and says, well, but there's no case that says that you have a right to videotape a social worker. And again, they do not go on to say, we're going to say that would be included. We're going to now say. So this person, which I don't know if they filed an appeal or not. Let me see. Oh, it does say appeal filed by Jacob Clark et al. And Bernadette Stone on August the 13th, 2020. Okay, so there will be a Sixth Circuit case coming out on this. And I'm going to find out who the attorney is. Sometimes I can find it on here. If not, I can look it up. Sixth Circuit attorneys for the plaintiffs. So Christopher Wiest and Robert Winter, and another guy, Thomas Burns. So they pulled some pretty good attorneys in to work on this. But so that's crazy. It's crazy that 7 other circuits say that it's clearly established that you can record police officers, i.e. government workers, in their official duties, if that's a clearly established right and you cannot be retaliated against it. And then the Sixth Circuit's going to nuance that out. Crazy. This is why it becomes so nuts. All right, so then they also raised, they raised this issue, the Fourth Amendment, and they say that the defendants entered their home without a warrant or without consent or exigency, and it's clearly established. Now, I'm going to say, buried in here in this opinion, is my little tiny civil rights claim to fame. Back in 2012, I had a case called Andrews v. Hickman County where I challenged social workers entering the home without a warrant. And again, they said it wasn't clearly established, but then they said, we're going to clearly establish it. And that was my Andrews v. Hickman County case. And then, but then they talk about my case, and they say that being the case, the court explained that social workers would have to obtain consent, have sufficient grounds to believe exigent circumstances exist, or qualify under another recognized exception of the warrant requirement before engaging in warrantless entries and searches of the homes. The Andrews court also noted, however, this is how they kill us, many contours of the right were not clearly established. Okay, this is why people go, oh, I want to sue the government. And I'm like, oh, you have no idea. Okay, so then they talk about this order that the judge entered. Remember, I told you that this judge entered an order that said that they had to cooperate with the investigation. So it says in here, it's very clear in here. It says, to be clear, the judge's order falls well short of a valid warrant. To be valid under the Fourth Amendment, a warrant must be issued by a neutral and detached magistrate, be supported by probable cause, and it must meet a particularity requirement, which requires the warrant to particularly describe the place to be searched or the things or persons to be seized. The order related to the 3 children do not contain any facts supporting probable cause. All right? So, I mean, it does say that just because a judge says cooperate with DCS, it is not an order to enter your home. It is not an order to enter your home. So we have to look at what can we find out of here that helps us. Then it goes on, though, to say, despite the judges, so that in court, though, the judge told them that the workers would need to have access to their home, but he didn't put it in the order. And it says, despite the judge's explanation, the order clearly has deficiencies. That being the case, listen, it is unlikely that either judge intended for the order to serve as a valid warrant. Thus, the court finds that any actions taken pursuant to the order were warrantless. Okay, they do say that, but then they go on to say, the question becomes thus, this is what I hate about these opinions, because when they say that, you know you're about to lose. The question thus becomes whether a reasonable social worker would understand that they are violating the Fourth Amendment based on the facts. And so, and it goes on to talk about the difference with administrative orders, and then they go talk about my case again and say that the Sixth Circuit has repeatedly refused to recognize that it's clearly established that social workers need a search warrant before entering a home, which is a bastardization of that case, because that is not what the 2012 case says. Now, what they conclude is, we'll get to that part. It does talk about bad faith investigations. There's no, that you have a right to be protected against those. That's important. I'm going to bring up, where is his statement here? Supreme Court. They ultimately say, find this place. Hang on, I want to read this because this is so frightening. It says, okay, state social workers' conduct of entering parents' home and searching it in reliance on a non-warrant court order, which was a county juvenile court order that authorized social workers to file abuse petitions in juvenile court, did not violate clearly established law. Thus, the social workers were entitled to qualified immunity in their 1983 claim alleging unconstitutional home search in violation of the Fourth Amendment arising from events stemming out of the child abuse investigations. Okay? So, it's still not clearly established. I mean, we've been working on this since 2012. Just this issue. Can a social worker enter your home without a warrant, without a search warrant, meets all the search warrant criteria, that is particularized, that it's probable cause, it states in there who's going to be searched and what they're searching for and what's about to be seized. So it's a continuous battle, because the law, we just have to create the law one little sentence at a time. It's crazy. It's so crazy. So who wrote this opinion? A Joseph H. McKinley Jr., senior judge, so he's been around a while. All right, so ultimately I will tell you they also brought up an issue with the corporal punishment. I'm not going to really spend much time on that. It's basically they're saying that the Kentucky law was clear, that there were limitations as to what a parent could do for corporal punishment. So they just kind of blew that off. But anyway. So that's it. Just trying to eke through our rights one sentence at a time, still fighting them. The question remains in our circuit is, can you record a social worker? Keep recording them, because until we keep recording them and posting them, we can't establish that right, even though it's established in like 6 of the other circuits. Well, I understand, Christina, but the United States Constitution, our courts have bastardized it. They've just bastardized it. Our rights, our parent rights fall only under the 14th Amendment, which is a due process amendment, and we don't have a parental rights amendment. We don't have anything that protects our homes and families, and we really need that. So, and I'm just going to say, for the issues with You know, I don't really put onto our page a lot of general stuff about virus and vaccines and, you know, the emergency orders they're doing and the lockdowns and the shutdowns and I know in Tennessee they did a well-check order that they were coming to homes and checking on the kids while the schools were closed down, which people started raising their arms about. They were like going crazy over, and I'm like, yeah, now you know how I feel and what I say all the time. So I'm just, you know, this is going to get worse. It's going to get worse for a lot of families. Maybe that'll help you. Yes, we do need an amendment. Yes, we need an amendment. And parentalrights.org has tried to do a parental rights amendment. It was not broad enough, so I didn't really get really behind it. It was mostly about education and healthcare decision making, which are very, very important, and I would love to see that, but it kind of fell short of just the protection of our homes against government intrusion, regardless of whatever the badge says, right? If they're a government worker, they're a government worker. So it doesn't matter whether they say CPS or police or fire department, right? If they're coming in your home against your, without your permission, then it is a violation of your Fourth Amendment right. Okay, so lots going on in the world, and I'm gonna tune out here. I always have a lot of things I want to talk to you about. I pull articles all the time. You know, I work full time. Y'all know, have heard me say that a million times. So I'm so happy to be able to, you know, come on and talk to y'all. Please share the videos. Please bring more people into Family Forward. I will tell you that Facebook put a restriction on our group that I have to approve the post. Partly, I'm sure, because a few people put posts up about COVID vaccines and the election, which are hot topics. And so please put your vaccine injury is real. That kind of goes on our page, but COVID is I'm just saying, to keep us from being scrutinized at that level. We really want to share. I want you to share your stories. I love it when parents and families sit down and just write their story out, put pictures of their kids up, pray for their kids, talk about the emotional impact it's had on their families, news stories, new laws, new rules, things that are going on across the country. I am in a listserv group with the American Bar Association. You know, we do pass around some information trying to see where other states are so that God knows we might ever have some continuity in this issue. But it's a huge battle. And, you know, the Families First Act has been pushed out to October 2022. We have got to dig in. We've got to dig our heels in, and we've got to take this serious, and we need to be the power to change this. So I see a few more have come on. However, I've been on here for a while, so I'm going to check out. And y'all who are just now coming on, just go back and watch it later when you can kind of kick back and, you know, have a cup of tea or something, whatever makes you feel good. All right, so I'll talk to you later. Love y'all. Hang in there. Keep fighting the fight. Get your facts together, like I said at the beginning. Bye-bye.